this is Henry, the computer guy, and you're most welcome to our fourth video about databases. Actually, in this video, we are going to be focusing on the field properties. But if at all you missed our first three videos, I would advise you to visit my channel, check under my playlist, then you'll be looking for the folder called Working with Databases, then you'll be able to follow along with us. So without wasting any time, let's dive into the real practice and we see how this one can be done. So remember in our previous three videos, we created a database called school database, and it is the one that we are going to be continuing with. So let me open it right away and do what we are supposed to do. So having opened our database, you're seeing that up here it is indicating the name of the database. That is the school database. And remember, in that database we only had one table, which was called the students table. So we can open our table and see the data which is there. So whenever you want to open your table, you just have to double click onto this table or right click and come to the option that says open. And having clicked on open, our data has been displayed to us, which is already into the table. So regardless of how you created your table, it is always a good idea to examine and set field properties. You know, these databases are always used by many people, and you cannot always be there to limit how they are going to be entering the data into your database. So it is always a right way to set field properties to guide and control data entry into the database. Actually, while some properties are available in the datasheet view, some properties can only be set in the design view. That means that you can always switch between the views, let's say the design view and the datasheet view. So whenever you want to access these views, you can always come to the option that says view and switch between the datasheet view and the design view. It depends on any of the two that you want to use at the moment. So if you are told you don't want to use this option, you can always come to your table that you have opened, right click onto it, and you'll have multiple options you can work with. For example, you want to save your table, you want to close your table, you want to close tables. For example, you have more than one table, you can close all of them. Then you can as well come and switch between the design view and the datasheet view. So now let's click on our design view and see the appropriate data types that we have applied before in our previous videos. So let me click on the design view. And having clicked on our design view, this is the information that we had. So we had the field names, we had the data types that we applied appropriately. And remember, when you apply appropriate data types, you won't be getting a lot of errors as people are entering data into your database. Then down here, we have our field properties that we are going to be working with. So whenever you want to read something or the description about a field property, just go and click where that field property is. Then aside here, you'll be able to read some information about that field property. So without wasting any time, let's see how we can work with our field properties. Let's first of all get an understanding of what field properties are. Let me pose a question to you. What are field properties? If I'm to answer this, these are properties that define the behaviors and the characteristics of a field. For example, you had a certain field, you don't want people to enter characters exceeding 9, you don't want people to enter certain kinds of data, you can always limit that using what we call the field properties. And what you have to note is that every field in a table has properties as we are going to be looking at them. So for our case, we are going to be beginning with what we call the field size. Let's pick a field name here. It's going to be our student's name. We come to the data type and click there. And having clicked there, below here, we can select different field properties. So for our case, we are going to begin with a field size. So what does the field size do? So this one will help you to set the maximum size for data to be saved in a field. For example, you're having the text, you're having the number, or you're having the auto number. you can always set the maximum number of characters to be stored in that field as people are entering it. For example, we don't want our students or learners to enter a name that exceeds 9 characters. What are we going to do for this? I'll come down here after clicking where my data type is. Then I'll come into the field properties. Then I'll select that one that says field size. So having done that, remember the short text is always limited up to a maximum of 255 characters. Someone can fill in too much data. But for our case, we want to limit these people to only enter 9 characters. So how are we going to do this? We are going to be rubbing these 255 characters. Then we put a value that we don't want these learners to exceed. For example, let me put 9. We don't want these learners to exceed 9 characters as they are entering their names. So what we do, we put our name there. Then let's try it and see whether it will be working for us. So for us to see that, we have to go to what we call the datasheet view and try it out. So let me click on the datasheet view. And whenever you click on the datasheet view, it will ask you to first of all save the data. Let me save the data by clicking on to yes, and they're going to tell us that the size of one or more fields has been changed to a shorter size. If the data is lost, validation rule may be violated. As a result, do you want to continue? Of course, I want to continue. I want to leave it as 9 characters. I'll click on the option that says yes. Having clicked yes, I'll come and want to feed in my data here. For example, I want to put in a name. I'll come here, then I'll type, for example, Namaganda. Let me type this one as Namaganda. Namaganda. So how many characters are we having here? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If I wanted to add the 10th character, let's say I want to add a T, I'll click onto my T and see whether it allows me to enter that character there. So whenever I type my T, it gives me that sound. That means that it cannot allow me to exceed 9 characters. That is how the field size works. So let's go back and talk about another field property. So now, another field property we are going to be talking about is the format. And what does the format let us do? For example, if at all we deal with, let's say, the date stroke time, let's pick another field here, try with another field. For example, we have the date of birth and we have it as a date stroke time. We want to choose a format for our dates. Remember, dates can always be written in different ways. Someone can write it as a DD stroke MM stroke YY. Another person can write it in another way, for example, DD MMM. Another one can write it, let's say, with a YYYY. So it depends on how you want these people to enter the dates into your database. You can always pick a format that you want them to follow. So this one specifically helps you to customize the way the field appears when displayed. It doesn't only work on the dates, it can work on different fields or data types. For example, we can have the date stroke time, we can have the currency, we can also have the yes or no. It depends on the field that you're going to be using and the data type you want to set. So for our case, we are going to try it with a date stroke time. Then we are going to be working with a currency. We can also work with another one, any of these that we have. So having clicked where our data type is, we are going to come to the option that says format. How do you want to format this date? Remember, whenever people enter these dates, they're going to enter them in different ways, but you can always limit or customize the way the date will be displayed as they enter it into your database. So let's come to this option that says that is like an arrow pointing down, and we look at the dates that we are having onto the list. So we have many dates here that we can choose from. For example, when you look at this, we can have the longer date, we can have the medium date, we can have many dates here. That means that you can always pick from the options that you have. For example, when I choose the medium date, I can always come and switch the view. For example, click on view and come to the datasheet view. They will ask me to save my data. Of course, I'm going to save it. And when you come here, the dates have been modified. You see, we have 02 April, then 99. So we can always play with these dates. For example, let's go back and change it to something else. So if I didn't want this date to appear as a medium date, I wanted to modify it in my way. Let me just come and wrap this. I can always come back to this option. And if at all I don't see any date of my choice I wanted to use, I can always type it myself there under the format. For example, I'm going to come to this section. I'll write, for example, I want to represent it with a DD. Then I'll represent, for example, I put a slash, then MM for month. Then I'll represent with, let's say, YY. Let me put a slash. Then I'll put year 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means that it will display two of them. Then to display the month, it will display the year. Let's see how that one looks like. So when we come back here to the datasheet view, you come and save your data again, then come and look for where your date is. You see the change. So we have put 2, we have put 2, and we have put 4. It has modified it. Let's try it in another way and see. Come back to the design view. When come back here, if at all I add another M here, let me make it 3 M's. Let me put another M. Then we come back and see the change. Come back to view, come to the datasheet view. It will ask you to save that. Of course, we are going to be saving it. Let's come back. So remember, when we put another M, this stands for an abbreviation. And for example, if I told you wanted to write the entire date or the entire month using the whole word, for example, January, February, you have to add another M. And they appear as 4M. So when you put these 4M's there, it is going to write it in the full form, not in abbreviation. For example, April has not been written in full form, so we can always put another M for that data to change. Let's come back and see how it will display. Click on the datasheet view, then come and say yes. So you're looking at our April now has been written in full. If we had February, then February would also be written in full form. That is how you can actually play with these dates and stroke time. You can always also write these first dates in words. How can we do that? You can always come back, switch to the design view, come and add another D here. When I add another D, now I'm having 3 Ds. For the 3 Ds, they're going to show us that change now. Let's come back to our design datasheet view. Then we have to click yes. And as you're seeing, we have abbreviations of the days that we have. Let's say Friday, we have Wednesday. And if I told you wanted to write them in full also, then you would come back and add another D for that section. Let me add another D to become 4. And when I add this D, it is going to write the day in full format. Let's come and click OK. Again, you're looking at it. Now it is showing us that we have these hashes. What do they stand for? They indicate that the space is not enough for the values to fit there. So we can always enlarge the column and look at what is there. So Friday has been written in full, Wednesday has been written in full, then this one has been written in full, and our year is also in full. You can always play with your dates depending on how you want people to enter them into your database. Let's try to make it smaller by going back to the design view. Then we come back and choose another one. So this was just a by the way. You can always play with the data depending on how you want people to display it into your database. Let me come and choose the medium date for it to be smaller so that we can have a wider space to work with. Let me come and choose medium date. It will be like this. Then I'll come back and choose the datasheet view. Then I'll come and click OK. It will change accordingly. This is what we are having. So we can make it again smaller because it had increased in size. So that is how we can work with our dates. And we have tried it for only the date stroke time. That is the format. It will only help you to customize the way the field appears when it is displayed. Number 3, let's come back to the design view and we look at another field property. For example, we have the decimal places. And what does this one help us to do? For example, we can use this one on the currency, and we can also use it on the numbers. We have the number, we have the currency. We can always decide how many decimal places we can always include there. So now, what does the decimal place do? This one helps you to specify the, let's say, the number of decimal places to use when displaying your numbers. So you can always come and choose the number of decimal places that you want, but by default, when you come to the decimal places here, it will be put on auto. It just puts the number of decimal places it can think of, but you can always customize them by coming to the right here, then click on the arrow, then choose the number of decimal places you want for the field to be having. If you want it to be 1, you can always choose the 1. Let's see how it changes that. By coming back to the datasheet view, then we come and click OK. So let's look at that field for the phase. It has increased in size. That's why you're seeing these hash values there. So we can increase it. So it has 1 dot this. So we have the money. Let's say it was 200,000. Then we have a 0.0. So we don't want this 0 back. So let me make it smaller, and I want to remove the 0 there. So you can always be playing with the decimal places. Just come to your design view, come to the section that says decimal places. I can always put it to none by selecting a 0. If I don't want decimal places to be there, I'll always choose an option that says 0. I'll come back and choose my datasheet view, then I'll look at my data. So the point or the decimal places have been removed from my money. Having looked at how we can work with the decimal places, now let's look at how we can work with the input mask. Let's switch to the design view again. So now we want to see how we can work with the input mask, but we have to understand what input mask does. So this will help you to display editing characters to guide data entry. So as people are entering data, you can always guide their entry by displaying what we call the input mask for them to guide them when they're entering their data into the database. We can always do this with different fields. For example, we can use the names, we can use the, let's say here we can use the student's ID, we can use the student's name, we can work with the telephone numbers, we can work with the dates, stroke time, we can work with the zip code. It depends on what exactly you want to do with your database. So for our case, we are going to try this one, for example, by using a telephone number. Remember, as we are having our database, we have that field for the telephone number. People are going to fill in data the way they feel they want. So how can we limit, or how can we display editing characters for those people to let them know that this is how you're supposed to enter the telephone number? So let's put that field down here as a trial. We'll be removing it later, but we can as well use it right now. So let's say we are going to be using telephone. So we are going to be using telephone. So the appropriate data type for the telephone is always the text. Remember, at times we have that +256 plus other codes or the country code. So you cannot always have that country code when you have used a number. And at times we have some separators, for example, the hyphen or the underscore. It depends on what people want to put in their databases as the separators. Let's say you have +256, let's say 0701, then hyphen, then other numbers. You can always put symbols there. So the right data type to use here would be the text, because it can allow any sort of characters that you can put for the telephone number. So now when we click onto our telephone, we come and choose the appropriate data type that is going to be text. And if at all you wanted to also display the numbers in front of, let's say, the telephone number that you have, let's say 0701, you want that first letter, that first 0 to be displayed, you always have to select text, because if you use number, that first 0 will not be displayed for you. So the appropriate data type to use is always the text. I'm going to come here under the input mask. And having clicked where my input mask is, there's some three dots here we are seeing. At times they're called the ellipse. We're going to click onto them. Having clicked on them, they're going to ask us that must first save the table before we continue. I'm going to say I'm going to save it. Having saved it, they're going to display for me some input mask wizard. And I can come and select that one that says phone number. And having selected it, when I click here, it displays some characters. That means that this will be displayed for someone as they're entering their phone numbers. Let me come and click on next. Let me come and click next. For example, I wanted to put a number there. I can say, let's say it is going to be plus 256. That is a code for Uganda. Then I can say 701334170. That is how I want my users to enter data into my database concerning the telephone numbers. I'll come and click next. And having clicked next, this is what they are representing for me and what is the difference between this 9 and that 0. I'm going to look at that. Then down here, you can as well to separate all the displayed characters as people are entering their data. That is what will be displayed. So we can try it down here, or you can come and click next. Then we are going to be having other two options. They are telling us that how do you want to store the data? So with the symbols, yes, I want to store the data with symbols. We can now click on the option that says finish. So now, when you come here, they have displayed for us these characters. So we have the 9, we have the 0, we have the 9, we have the 0. So we have two values here, which are different. We have the 9 and we have the 0. What does the 9 stand for? The 9 is always optional. That means that whenever you see that name, it is always optional. And whenever you see the 0, it is always required. 0 is always required. It is a rule. It is required. You have to put it there. And 9, it is always optional, even if you don't put it there. So having understood that, let's see how we can put in data into that field that we have just entered. Let's switch to that data sheet view. And having clicked that, they're going to tell us to save. Of course, we are going to be saving it. Then we scroll to our field that we have entered. That is the telephone number. When I click here, you're going to see that they are displaying characters for me, but they're not going to put me at the start. So how can I do that to be put at the start? So what you do, you click on a field before that, field that you want to use, then click the tab button. Having clicked the tab button, it will take you specifically to where you can fill in the data. For example, if I want to put a telephone number that is mine, I'll come and say plus, let's say 256, let's say 701 33 4170. That is it. So it has indicated that for me. When I click here, it is displaying this. I'm going to enlarge it a little so that we can see the data all together. Then I come back here. I want to put another phone number. I'll just come and click the tab button to take me to that next field. I'll type, let's say 256. Then I'll come and type 783 3341 under 0. So I'll come and click again here. So you see my phone numbers are aligned very well. So you can always limit how people are entering data into your database. So let's go back to that design view and try to work with another field. If you come to the student's ID, let's scroll up. We come to the student's ID. We want to put a row there also. We're going to select it, then come under the input mask. So now, at times, if told you want to display some things automatically, for example, remember we are using SOO01, SOO02, SOO03, like that. So we can always display some characters automatically when users are entering data and they just add on some simple data. For example, I'm going to open my quotes. I want to, let's say the SO. Then I'll close it. Then I'll put my hash values, two of them, such that I want these people to put two values into my database. So the SO will be displayed automatically. Then they will be able for them to enter two values. For example, the hash stand for values. So I'll come back to the view. Then switch to the datasheet view and see how this can work. I'll come and click OK. And having come here, I'm going to wrap this information that I had put. And when I click here, I'll come and click here again. Of course, it's going to display the SO for me. Then I'll just come and add my 0, then a 1. When I come back here, I will wrap this because we had already put it. It will not work on it. So we come back here and just come back and look at it. When I click here, I'll just add a 0 and a 2. When I come on number 3, I'll come and click here. Then it is displayed automatically for me. Then I'll add a 0 and a 3. If you wanted to continue, then you'll continue with that. Let me click here down. I will come and put another 0 and a 4. This is how it does it for the input mask. Let's switch and work with one other example about the input mask, then we can always continue. Come back to the design view. Let's talk about the names, the field names. Where are they? We have our student's name here. When we come to the input mask here, we can always put some limitations onto this field by using the input mask. So I'll come and put, let's say, the greater than symbol, then I'll put a capital L. What does this represent? So the greater than symbol will always make what I'm going to be putting into that field, all of them as uppercase or capital letters. So whenever I put the greater than symbol following the L stands for letters. That means that this letter is going to be forced to be a capital letter. And when I come and add some other values, for example, I add the less than symbol. That means that it stands for lowercase characters. Then I add question marks. Remember, we say that we want 9 characters for this field. I'm going to be adding 8 question marks. And the question marks stand for being something that is being optional. The L stands for something that is required. Someone has to put the capital letter and it is required as the first one. So it is a required. So when I come and put question marks, I'm going to put 8 of them because we want only 9 characters for that field. So I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means that the first one will be a limitation. I want someone to enter a letter that is going to be capital. That's why I put the greater than symbol. Then the less than symbol means that it is going to be a lowercase. So someone can write this and they are all option. So let me zoom it and we see it clearly by right clicking onto it and click on the option that says zoom. And having clicked it, it is still very small. Then I'll come and highlight it here. Then I'll come and click on the font. Then you'll come and look at the size. Let's pick the size that is something like 24 to make it a little bit big for people to see it. Then click on the option that says that. So this is what I've put into my input mask. I've said that the greater than symbol is always making something in uppercase or capital letters. Then the less than symbol makes something to appear in lowercase. You remember when people are entering their names into our database, someone can write the name in capital letters, someone can write it in small letters. So the data is not going to be matching. So I can always put roles onto the entry of this data by emphasizing someone to write the first letter as a capital letter. Remember, names have to be having the first letter as a capital letter. So I'll emphasize that by putting a greater than symbol and the letter L. Now, when I come to the less than symbol, this one emphasizes lowercase. Then when you put these question marks, these are always optional. Someone can write a name that cannot reach up to these characters or to that cannot match up to the number of these characters. Can write, let's say John cannot exceed these characters or it cannot match these characters. That means that you can, let's say, write 3 characters, 4 characters, 5 characters. It is just optional, but the L will be emphasizing something that is required. Someone has to write that character. So that is an explanation about what I've written in the input mask. This one emphasizing the capital letter. This is emphasizing the lowercase letters, and these are always optional. So that means anyone can decide not to fill all of them. Let's click OK and decide to put some data into our database and see how it works. So let's come back to view and switch to the datasheet view. So we can click OK. And having clicked OK, remember we have done that one onto our field that was the student's name. Let's come down here and try to put some characters. You see that they are displaying characters that we can follow. So I can come to the next field or the field that is before and click the tab button to take me to that. Remember, now I'm going to be putting a name. But I said that we put the greater than symbol and L. It is a required capital letter as the first one. So if you write it as small letter onto your computer, it will not be accepted. It will convert it to what we call a capital letter. Let me type, let's say, Sam Nedala. Let me say, type Nedala. If I type N, automatically it will put it in capital letter. That is a rule. Then I will say E. Now E has been written in small letter. Even if I turn my capital letter on or my caps lock on, it will write it with small letters or lowercase letters. So I will type Nedala, just like that. So now even if I don't finish these other characters, it will just be okay because I use the question mark, which is always optional. Even if I don't finish them, it will just help me and I continue. So that is what I wanted to show you with the input message. So let's switch back to our design view and work with other remaining field properties. Now let's talk about the caption. So, and the caption we are going to be using our field name, that is the date of birth. When we come to the date of birth and come down here, we have that option that says caption. This is going to be actually the text that will be displayed by default in the labels of the forms, the tables, the reports, if we don't set it. For example, we have this one as date of birth. If we wanted to modify it as, let's say, let me wrap this and put the capital D, then I put a full stop D or B. So you're seeing that we have some symbols here. So when we try to continue and see, let's try to continue and see what it will do. So as you put this, remember names cannot contain these symbols. They are telling us that the field name you entered does not allow Microsoft Access objects naming rule. And under the naming rule, we cannot include this into our name. So what we can do for this, we can always just come put, let's say, something here. Let's say date of birth. Date of birth. Then under the caption, we can come and type exactly the name we want to appear into our table when we switch to the datasheet view. So I'll come and type the D, then the period, or then the period, then B, the date of birth. So when I switch back to my datasheet view, it will take this one as the name of that, or as the label in that table. Let me come back and switch. I will say okay, and automatically we come back to the DOB, and the DOB has been put under our column for the date of birth as the label. So whenever you want to write something that is not allowed as the naming convention in database or access, you can always put it under the caption. So let's go back to our design view and we work upon another field property. So let's look at what we call the default value, and this automatically assigns a value to a field when new records are added. For example, if we are entering data, example, let me scroll down here and we wanted to include another field, for example, for let's say we wanted to write a date of entry, date of entry, such that it will always be giving us the date. We choose the date stroke time, just like that. Then we want this date to be always given automatically depending on the day we have entered the data. So we can always just come to the default value. When you come to the default value, we can put today's date by saying equals, let's say we can say date on now, like typing now, then we open our brackets, just like that. So it will be assigning that field that today's date. We want to always, whenever we are entering data, we want this value to be given by default whenever we enter data into our database. Let's come back and switch to our datasheet view and see the change. We click on save, and having clicked there, we can scroll and see what we have for our date. You see, it has been displayed automatically, but these are many. So we come back and change the format. By coming back to our date, then we come to the format as we did earlier, then we choose the medium date for it to fit there. Then let's come back to our design, then come back to our datasheet view. We click OK, and having clicked OK, we can now scroll to that section. You see, the date has been included automatically. Why are these ones not included? Because we had typed them earlier. That means that we have to put them manually. So it works on only the fields that you have just entered when that field property has been set. That is what we call the default value. Let's go back to our design view and work upon another field property. So another field property we are going to work with is what we call the validation rule. And this one will supply an expression that must be true whenever you enter or change data into a field. For example, we can work with let's say we choose the gender. Let's come and look at the gender. Where is our gender? Our gender is here. Remember, we had put a lookup onto that one. When you look at it, we are supposed to be selecting from either the female or male. So we had set our lookup onto that. Someone is supposed to be selecting on any of the two that we had filled. That was for the gender. So when we come here, we want to go to the validation rule. We want to put a rule onto this. Remember, you can put, someone is supposed to either put female or male, and you find someone putting another word. So we want to limit people from entering those words apart from female or male. So what we do, we shall come and write them here. So someone is going to be either entering male, let me type it in capital letter, male, I leave some space, I'll type or, then someone can as well type female. So these are the ones I want someone to pick from, not someone entering any other character apart from this. I'll come back to the datasheet view and see how it is going to be displayed. So click here, they're telling us data integrity rules have been changed. Existing data may not be valid for the new rules. Of course, it's okay, we can do that. Then they're telling us that existing data violates the rules for the data validation. So let's first of all look at the data which is there actually, and we change it accordingly. Let's click OK. So now we come to the field for gender. Of course, when you click here, someone has to pick from, as we said earlier. So now let's type something that is not related to what we call the female or male. Someone can say, let's say, done. And we come and continue. But when you type done there, it is not going to be allowed to be entered there. So they are going to tell us that one or more values are prohibited by the validation rule. So they are telling us male or female is set for students' gender. You cannot enter anything related to that is not related to either female or male. So when someone says that, will come and be able to select Namaganda is a female, then it will be displayed automatically. Then this one is Nedala is going to be displayed as a male. I will only allow people to select from those two items that I have into my database. You can as well work with it on numbers. For example, when you come back to the design view, I come back to the option that says position. I don't want someone to have a position of, let's say, less than or it can be greater than 0. I don't want someone to put in values less than 0. I can come onto that one. I'll come to the validation rule. Then I'll say greater than 0. So someone will not enter values that are not greater than 0. That means that they will be starting from 1, 2, 3, going otherwise. So we can come back and switch that view and work with that data by entering the data we want. Let's talk about another field property, and that is called the validation text. Remember, we have been working with gender. We come back here, then look for the validation text. What does the validation text do? This one will supply an expression when a validation rule has been violated. For example, we are told people to enter either female or male. So when they enter different data, the text that will appear for these people to know and to correct that error is what we call the validation text. We always come and put it here. So I can say enter either male or female. That means that when someone makes a mistake, this one will be displayed for them to know, hey, I've made a mistake, I have to use this and this. Let's come back and try it and see. Switch to the datasheet view, come back and click OK. And having done that, they're telling us that our integrity rules have been changed. Okay, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Let's come back here. Having put this here, we are going to come to the gender and we come and put, for example, I type done here. When I type done here, for example, they're going to tell me that either enter either male or female. Or when I come and choose this, it will come and allow. When I come and change this to something else, it will be telling me that, sorry, remember we had also applied another rule onto the position that something has to be greater than a 0. So we have to put that on the student's position. Yeah, we come to the position, we also enter something that is greater than 0. We put, let's say 1. We put, let's say 4. Let's put 4 because we already have 1. We can put also this as, let's say 6. We can put this one as, let's say 5, depending on what you wanted to use for your data. So let's go back to the design view and work with another field property. So another field property we are going to be looking at is let me see, we are going to be, let's say, working with again gender. Let's click on gender, and if at all you wanted to add another field property, we can come to the option that says required. Whenever something is required, that is a must. Someone has to enter something there before they leave that field. And when someone doesn't enter any item there, it will always be giving them error messages to include something before they leave that field. So you can always just come to the option required, come to your options, then come and either choose yes or no. If you always want something to be required, someone has to fill in something before going to another field, you'll have to set it to an option that says yes. If you put it on no, then it is not required. People can always leave that field when nothing has been entered there. So let's come to the alignment. For example, we have our student's name. We wanted them to be in the right. We can always choose that field, then come to the option that says alignment. When we come to the alignment, we can always choose how our text is going to be displayed in that column. For example, you'll come and choose from either you have the general, you have the left, you have the center, you have the right, or the distributed. So you can always pick from any of these that you want. Let me put it in center. So all my students' names will be put into the center as they are entering them into my database. Let's now look at what we call the index, and that one can always be working on, let's say, we can work with it on primary key by clicking here. Let's use the auto number for this case. And when you come to the auto number, the index is actually something that is going to help us speed up access to our data. And whenever we set it to yes, that means that it will not be able to allow duplicates. When you come here and come down to what we call the indexed, and when you come to the indexed, you can always choose the option from here. For example, if I don't want to allow duplicates for this field, I'll type yes, no duplicates. So let me just leave it to what we already had, and that is the yes. We don't want to accept the duplicates, and that one works at times on the primary key to prevent entry of duplicate data into our database. We can always continue to another field property, and let's look at what we call the new values. The new values can also work on the auto number, and it can as well help us to set whether an auto number field is going to be incremented or given at random. For example, when I come here onto the auto number, I can come down here and click where we have the new values. You can decide whether your numbers are going to be incremented. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or given at random, someone can give it, database will be able to give it either 1, 5, 6, 8, just giving them at random. So you can always choose that from here by coming to this option command, choose either it is going to be incremented or it is going to be given at random. So let me just give it increment the way it was and click aside. Another field we are going to be field property we are going to be talking about is let's say the date picker, and that one works with only the fields that have the data type as the dates. It only works for the dates. So if you want to always display the date palette, someone can always pick that date from. You can always use that by coming to show date picker, and it only allows that to be done on only the dates. You can always come and click here, come to this option, then come and select either never or for only the dates. And whenever we go back to our datasheet view, you'll come back and look at where we have the dates. So where do we have the dates? For example, the DOB. When I click here, it is going to display the date palette, and we can always be able to select from the dates available for us. That is what we call the show date picker. So let's come back and switch to our design view and work with another field property. The thing we are going to be talking about is the IME mode. The IME mode is the input method editor. This is a program that allows you to enter Asian text in programs by converting your keystrokes into Asian characters. For example, you wanted to convert something to Japanese, to Chinese, you can always use what we call the IME mode. So I'm not going to work with it, and it is having no control. It can always be disabled, or you can always decide to click from the list of those ones. I'm not going to work with that one, and these are the field properties I wanted us to look at. Actually, let me actually switch back to our datasheet view, and we look at the data we have been entering. So this is the data we have been entering. So in the next video, I'm going to come back when I've entered this data such that we do our queries, we do our forms, we do our reports when we already have the data with us. Let me take a second and fill in this information. For example, we have number 3. This is, we can choose, let's say, I'm going to type it was 04, and it was, let's say, it was let's say 08, and it was 1995 again, 1995. When you come to the position has already been given. We can also modify the money for boarding section to be 500,000. Let me change this to 500. Let me change this to if it is a day section, I'm going to choose, let's say, 300,000. Then I'm going to be entering here. For example, actually, we can also choose the format for this, either not to be in shillings, to be in dollars. We can always choose the format. If I wanted it to be a standard, I can as well come back to the field properties. This side, I'll come to view, the design view, then I'll come to that one has been the fees. We can decide to change this to a standard by coming to the format and come here. Then we come and pick the standard. Then we don't have the decimal places. I can do it for all this. I'll come and choose the standard. Then I don't need decimal places. I'll put a 0 here. Then I'll come back to my datasheet view. Then that is how it will be displayed. Let me make it, this is 500,000. This is going to be 500,000. 500,000. This is going to be 300,000. 300,000. This is going to be also 300,000. No, let me just end here. Come and someone has paid, let's say, 200,000. Let's say someone has paid, let's say, this one has paid 400,000. Let's say someone here has paid, no, let me remove 10. Someone here has paid, let me remove 10 here also. Someone has paid, let's say 150,000. So we say that 500 is going to be boarding, 500 is going to be boarding. So we are going to be selecting boarding. This is also boarding. This is day and this is day. Then we can as well put the picture for this. Remember we said we can just copy the picture. Let me just copy this one by right clicking on it. I'll come to more options. I'll come and click on copy. Then I'll come back to my database. I'll paste it there. Then I can paste the same pictures just throughout. Let me just paste the same picture. Let me just paste the same picture. Then I'll come and type some emails. Let me type the same emails. I don't have many emails. Let me type Henry Sechito at let's say gmail.com, and I'm going to be copying this to fill it in all. It depends on the emails that you're having, but for my case, let me use the same email. Then I can always decide to attach files or I don't attach them. And remember we said that the balance was a calculated field or data type, and it is always going to be subtracting our fees and the amount paid. Then we can always be able to put in some phone numbers the way we want them. Remember, I say that we are going to remove these. They were just for illustration purposes. Let me put in these dates, then finish. Let me come to another date here. Let me say, this. Let me say 1996. Let me put another name. Remember, we said these names are going to be put in the center, and you're seeing they are put in the center. Then we come and put another name that is going to be Emma. Then we can put value here. It was then it's supposed to be S00 SO05. So that is actually we had for today, and I'm going to be pausing this video and I'll type in our records up to a maximum of 10 records. Then we can use them in our next video when we have the data to work with. We perform our queries, we perform our forms, we also work on our reports. Remember, it's been Henry, the computer guy, and thank you for being such a good audience. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye. I sign out.